Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to see you all. You actually have no idea how excited I am to see you all. My name is Allison Bie. I'm the director at the Goldfarb Center, and I want to welcome you to the first of 4 different conversations that we're going to have in April. Because I knew you all weren't busy enough in April, I wanted to throw some more at you. But I really appreciate you all being here for this first conversation. We are hoping to bring conversations to you about issues that are coming up every day. And so we thought, what better thing to start with than something that my generation knows very little about, and you know a lot more. And so we are really happy to be here in conversation with Dexter Thomas, who I'm going to get to in a minute. But Dexter, yay, we're so happy you're here. And yeah, all right. So the question for tonight is, will the government actually end up banning TikTok? And for those of you who know me, I'm a lawyer. I've worked in politics and public policy my whole career. And oftentimes we separate issues of culture, of music, of art from issues of politics, but they shouldn't be separated because they fundamentally inform each other. And so tonight is an important conversation about the intersection of those issues and understanding how pop culture can influence politics. So we are super happy to have an incredibly talented practitioner and commentator on these issues with us tonight, Dexter Thomas. So let me tell you a little bit about this man who I've just gotten to know. So Dexter is a former on-air correspondent for Vice News Tonight. He has documentaries that appear on HBO, Vice TV, Showtime. He covers topics from policing and opioids to hip hop in China and to elections in South Africa. So this man covers a wide variety of topics. And if that wasn't enough, he's a Fulbright scholar. He's a recipient of 2 Emmys. He worked on a Pulitzer Prize winning coverage while he was at the LA Times. I don't know if he was like 100, I'm not sure. And he's also the host and producer of Reset, which is a 10-episode TV series covering the dark side of video games, something I also don't know much about. And if it wasn't enough, he has a PhD from Cornell in East Asian Studies, and he's currently a visiting professor at the University of California. So I couldn't think of a better person to host this conversation. And honestly, Dexter, we just want you to move to Waterville and spend like a semester with us so we can have more conversation.
Hey.
So can't wait to have you. And before I turn us over to the conversation, I want to also introduce to you my friend, Koto Yamada, who is joining me on stage for this conversation. Koto is a junior. She's an econ and an ES major. And I've been very lucky to work with Koto. We were part of a jam plan this year, working on issues of policy and business. And as importantly, Koto actually knows a lot about TikTok. And she is going to be really helping us drive this conversation. So just so you know how this is going to go, we're going to spend about a half an hour, maybe a little less, in conversation between the 3 of us. And then we're going to spend the remainder of the time, the last half hour, with your questions. Like, what's up for you? What does this bring? Like, what do you want to know? And I know that's really what Dexter's interested in hearing about. So we'll do a little bit of us, and then we'll do to you. So with that, Dexter, welcome. And I'm going to kick it over to Koto, who's going to start us off.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for being here. A huge part of the dialogue around TikTok is the importance of the algorithm. And for those that are less familiar, the algorithm is a system that makes content recommendations tailored to each user. And these recommendations are displayed on the user's For You page. So to kick things off, as an early user of the app yourself, Dexter, we'd love to hear a little bit more about what your For You page looks like. So if you could describe your feed in a few words, what would they be?
Okay. So thank you so much for the really, truly kind introduction. So I'm gonna jump into it because I know we only got so much time. So I'm just gonna be real, and I'm gonna do what I often like to do with friends is I'll just say, yo, I'm gonna pull out my phone. I'm just gonna get on TikTok, like, hand me your phone. I'll hand you mine. And so I'm gonna do that virtually. So usually this would be a 2-way thing. So there's a level of trust that I'm giving you all. So hopefully you will be kind to me for the rest of this talk because I'm being very vulnerable with you right now. I'm going to show you, I just opened TikTok. This is what I have. I have a dude in a beard with a Pokemon Master hat on. Don't know what he's talking about. He seems very serious about whatever it is. After that, and this is live. I'm not. This is not this is not pre-produced or anything. This is actually a friend of mine who is talking about this is a civil war that is happening in Sudan. And this is somebody who I interviewed recently. She's got family there, so she's talking about the fact that the crisis in Sudan is, I believe, the UN has said it is the largest humanitarian crisis on the globe right now. So I don't know how many of you all pay attention. I think a lot of you all pay attention to what's happening in various regions in the world right now. And for somebody to say that what is happening in Sudan is the worst, that's pretty bad. So, I mean, millions of, so many dead, so many at risk of starvation. Starvation is already happening. And then here is somebody playing Fortnite. And yeah, somebody trolling somebody in Fortnite. So that is and then somebody explaining that he made this meme with Peter Griffin. So that's mine. So multiple languages, sometimes jokes of really, really kind of weird and bizarre humor about cartels in Mexico, bizarre stuff from Japan, MF Doom covers from Korean kids. It runs the gamut. It runs the gamut. Jokes about Ramadan, Ramadan Kareem for anybody celebrating, or for anybody observing. But yeah, it's a lot. So my For You page is a whole bunch of niches, really deep into those niches. But it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. And I'm always interested to find out what other people are into.
Thank you so much. That is a level of vulnerability that I respect so, so much. And
Thank you. I appreciate it.
it helps us get to know you. So thank you so much. So as of 2023, there were over 150 million Americans alone on TikTok. That's nearly half of the country's population. And I think for most users, including myself, I see TikTok as almost a way for users to just create and share short form videos. But to
Right.
give the audience a higher level overview, how does TikTok generate its revenue? What does it mean for the app to collect data on you? And what kind of privacy and national security concerns might this raise?
Okay, so there's a few questions in here. So the first one is, how does it make money? The easiest way to explain that is ad revenue, in-app gifts. So ad revenue, I think, is the easiest thing to use. So by the way, if I could see the audience real quick, how many of y'all raise your hand if you do use TikTok? Okay, so most of you all. Okay, great. Raise your hand if you do not. Interesting. Okay. Raise your hand if you have never used TikTok at all. Okay, wow. This is actually really interesting. Okay, so this helps me to know what to do with my answer here. Okay, we can go back to the front or however you like to do it. So I'll explain. The easiest way to explain this is TikTok makes money off of ad revenue. So like most social media platforms, and frankly, like everything on the internet now, after every few TikToks that you see, after every few short videos you see, you'll eventually see an ad. So there are other ways that they can get money. For example, in-app gifts. There are ways that you can give gifts to other users, and TikTok will, of course, take a chunk of that. Then, of course, there's now an on-platform shopping platform. So, and this is, can I curse?
Mhm.
Okay. This is what, and I'm doing this for a specific reason. There's a very, very well-known, very well-regarded scholar named Cory Doctorow, who has referred to something that usually tends to happen with social media platforms, which he calls enshittification. So I'm going to use that word. And I would argue actually TikTok is going that direction, which is, you might notice, for those of you who are TikTok power users, you might notice that you're seeing a lot more ads. You might notice that you're seeing a lot more shop stuff. So what you'll see is somebody will be saying, I don't know, hey, these toothpicks are amazing. And it's just a TikTok of somebody talking about how amazing these toothpicks are. And there's a little link at the bottom of the screen where you can buy the toothpicks inside of the shop, inside of the app itself. So that's one way. Broadly speaking, however, a good rule of thumb is if you're not paying for something, you are the product. This goes for Facebook. This goes for YouTube. This goes for Google. This goes for Gmail. If you are not paying for the service, if something is free, you are the product. What does that mean? Usually your attention, the right to send ads to you. So, ads, of course, are only interesting if there's an off chance that you might buy the thing. So, quick show of hands, who in here is in the market for a jumbo jet? Anybody trying to buy a Boeing? No. Okay, so showing you all an ad for that would probably be a bad idea. And so what if you are the product, if you are yet again, if you are the product, what a platform was going to want to know is, who is this person? What age are they? What is their gender identity? What sort of things do they like to buy? What sort of things do they not like to buy? Where do they live? Right? How many family members do they have? Do they celebrate this holiday? Do they care about this football team or this basketball team? And so, having data on somebody is extremely valuable. And all of that information that I told you right now, that is something that TikTok would absolutely love to have. So would Meta. So would, Facebook, all these other apps. They'd love to have that, because if you were a marketer sitting in that room, you just got so much valuable information about me in terms of how you can sell things to me, right? You found out that I'm interested in Sudan. You found out what languages I speak, maybe what languages I don't speak. Just by hearing me talk, you could probably tell where I'm from. You could probably tell how old I am. You could tell my gender expression. You can tell a lot of things about me. And so a marketer would be listening to all this, just like an algorithm would be listening to all this and saying, here's some things that I could probably sell to this guy. I probably can't sell him a plane. I might be able to sell him a video game. Might be able to sell him a car. Might be able to sell him, food, some kind of, some restaurant coupons or something like that. So anyway, okay. So the algorithm is always listening or watching, however you want to say it. So now, what are the security concerns? I'm going to give you the diplomatic version of this. So anybody heard of ByteDance? Okay, a couple people. All right, so here we go. So I'll just lay this out for you. So here's the background. Here is the justification for a potential ban, okay? So the background here is that TikTok's parent company is called ByteDance. ByteDance is based in China. So TikTok is, I'm sure we all know at this point, the app comes from China. So China has laws essentially that allow the government to spy basically on anybody in China for any reason. So for example, in the United States, if let's say you're using Facebook for some strange reason, if the US government wants data from Facebook or Instagram, like let's say the police want to know the location you logged in from, or the FBI wants to know how many times you logged in last week. Instagram could refuse, and they could say, I'm not giving you that data, or you're going to need a court order for that. And because the promise that is being made between you and the company or the implied promise that's being made between you and the company is that you trust them with your data to a certain degree, right? That you won't just that the company won't just hand over your data. Company will just tell anybody who asks where you live. In China, there is no expectation of that, and there is no protection for that. So if the government wants a social media app's data, company gives it to them. So the concern is that because TikTok is run by a Chinese company, they could use it to spy on Americans effectively. There is no evidence, I have to say this, there is no evidence that TikTok has ever shared any US user data with Chinese authorities. There is no evidence. But the concern is still there, and to a degree, it makes sense. So hopefully that answers the three-part question there.
Yes, so I would love to jump in on that, because I think that is a perfect segue into some of the conversations we've been having about what is actually happening in the policy arena, right? We've got this, we're talking about how is it funded? How does it make its money? How is it collecting data on us? Like, what's that? So we now know, right, that this has become a political football of some sorts, right? And and so the House of Representatives has passed a law that is, it's easy. The law is not literally to ban TikTok, but has to do with ownership. But, it passed the House in a bipartisan way that we don't see very often, right? That's not something we're seeing out of Washington. We have, the vote was really strong in favor of what we'll just call for shorthand a ban. But can you talk to us a little bit about what you think is going on Capitol Hill? And I mean, I know there's a lot to unpack there, but you just said there's no evidence of this, but what is happening? Why is this gaining so much momentum? And is that in all related to the campaign that's coming up, or like, what are you seeing and what are you hearing from people you're talking to?
So the campaign thing is interesting because Trump was promising he tried to ban actually through an executive order when he was in office. It didn't work for a number of reasons. Executive orders, you have to be, those have to be pretty watertight. And frankly, his wasn't very good, just in terms of policy. It was written sloppily enough to where a judge was ordered to shoot, lawyers were able to shoot holes in the thing, and a judge just said, no, this is speculation. This doesn't make any sense. Now, does it have to do with campaign? I don't know necessarily that Biden is campaigning on a promise to ban something. As a matter of fact, I think not too long ago, Biden was saying he would not use TikTok. But you can find Biden on TikTok right now with memes of lasers shooting out of his eyes. So everybody's done a complete 180. Trump is now saying that a ban on TikTok, Trump was trying to ban it. Now he's saying that a ban on TikTok would play right into Zuckerberg's hands. Not wrong, but it is a complete 180. So what's happening? There's three things I think that we should talk about. The first thing, let's just elephant in the room, xenophobia. The app is based in China, and anti-Asian racism is a bipartisan feature. Republicans do it very well. Democrats are also pretty decent at it themselves. So I'm going to set that aside. I think we can talk about that a bit later, but let's just remember that that's there. The second thing is that security is an issue with TikTok. It is. Security is also an issue with all apps. So I'm a journalist here, so I'll speak kind of from concerns that I might have, right? So in 2022, there were some reporters at Forbes that got some anonymous leaks within TikTok, and they wrote an article about it. And TikTok tried to track the journalists in order to track down who the leakers were. So basically, they tried to figure out, okay, where were these journalists at these times? And maybe we can figure out, okay, if they were next to an employee, I'm simplifying here. Maybe if they were next to an employee, we can figure out who they were talking to. Because let's figure out who these anonymous leakers are. There's very much not okay, right? Now that being said, before we run and say, oh my God, TikTok, this is terrible. Look at what these, monsters are doing. Facebook has been caught doing very similar things, trying to track journalists. Uber has been caught doing very similar things, trying to track journalists. So security is a thing, but it is a concern for all of these social media apps, right? The third thing, though, is TikTok is not doing itself any favors. TikTok has been promising, and I'm going to read a quote here. The House hearing from 2 years ago, their CEO, and this is somebody that I interviewed recently. We can talk about my interview with him if you'd like. But the CEO said, quote, American data is stored on American soil by an American company overseen by American personnel. They even call this project Project Texas. Why do they call it Project Texas? I can only speculate, but I think it has something to do with what is more American than Texas, saying that you're moving all of your stuff to America, and it's called Project Texas. Are all of the servers in Texas? Probably not, but we're calling it Project Texas to make y'all feel good, right? So here's what's been happening is earlier this year, there were leaks that were showing that data is still being shared with the parent company in China. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything necessarily nefarious is happening. This could very well be just sloppy management of resources and not handling like employees' laptops. Frankly, from some of the stuff that I've read, it kind of sounds like part of it is that. But from a policy standpoint, it doesn't matter. The fact that ByteDance is asking for data from the state's operation, that's a no-go. The line has been drawn and they're crossing it. And so, again, three things: xenophobia, the fact that all of these apps are huge security concerns. I think we should all be concerned about the security of all of these apps, but also the fact that TikTok is getting sloppy.
Thank you so much. And just so we have enough time for our Q&A, we just wanted to wrap things up with one final question for you, Dexter.
Sure.
How has TikTok contributed to increased digital fluency across generations, in your opinion?
That is an excellent question. I like the way that it's worded. Um, Let me talk about the flip side. So has I want to address some of the concerns of, has TikTok made us dumber? I'm just going to put it like that, right? Um, and we could talk about that a bit if you would like, but I will say that TikTok has TikTok users are aware of the algorithm in a way that I've never seen before, ever. I don't necessarily think this is necessarily a great thing. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's a phenomenon that I haven't really seen too many people talk about. So here's what I mean. Again, for those of you all who use TikTok, you've probably been on TikTok and seen comments where somebody says something like commenting to stay on this side of TikTok. Maybe you ever seen that? Or like commenting to see more of this? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Facebook users don't do this. Instagram users don't really do this, right? YouTube, Twitter, all of these things. They're not. Now, these algorithms have existed for a long time, right? Years. There's no way, or at least we don't do this anymore. Programs don't do this anymore, where they just give you a straight feed of everything that was posted in a chronological order. We haven't done that for 5, 6, 7 years, right? Algorithms have always been at play because, again, what is the point of TikTok? The point of TikTok is to keep you on the app longer so they can show you more ads. That is the point. And so the more fine-tuned the algorithm is, whether in tune with your interests or perhaps creating interest for you that you didn't know you had, is the better it is at that, the longer you're going to spend on the app, the more successful it is for them. So what I have seen is on TikTok, there is this dance with the algorithm that I see people doing. And you'll see people get on TikTok. For example, one of the things, how does TikTok figure out if you like something? If you let the video loop more than once. If the video loops more than once, it thinks, oh, you must think this is funny or interesting. You must have liked that dance or whatever it is. And so if you let the thing loop more than once, it says, okay, interesting. I'll try showing you more of that. If a video shows up and you immediately swipe away, I don't want to see that. It says, okay, I guess I won't show them that anymore. If you comment, it thinks, wow, you must really be interested in this. If you like it, it says, yeah, you like this, right? And so you'll see people trying to manipulate the algorithm in a way that I've never seen on any other platform. It quite simply doesn't exist on other platforms. And so I don't know that this necessarily means digital literacy. I would actually almost argue the opposite, because another thing that you see on TikTok is, because TikTok is such a full-featured app, you don't have to leave the app for anything. So a lot of people don't use Google. They ask questions in the app. So somebody will say, hey, yeah, man, this happened to me in the UK. Like, people drive like this. And somebody will say, oh, is it legal to do that in the UK? Bro, Google. Ask. Why would you ask? Get on Google, because if you ask a question in the comments, maybe somebody will answer you in 5 hours. Maybe it'll be accurate. Maybe someone's going to troll you. Like, anybody ever try to ask what a song is and somebody tells you Sandstorm? Come on, man. Like, the comment section is not reliable, but people are really, really used to staying in the app. So you could say that's a bad thing, but also people are, again, I think, increasingly aware that, or at least they think that, the algorithm can be manipulated. For example, anybody know what algo speak is? You've seen it. Algo speak is short for algorithm speak. So have you ever heard anybody say like unalived online? Yeah, that's TikTok. That's TikTok, because the perception is, and sorry, this is going to get a little dark for a second. So unalived is a euphemism for killed. For somebody died, or somebody, was killed or killed somebody, right? And so the perception is that, and it's not necessarily wrong, that TikTok will censor things, and it does censor things, just like most of the apps do. All the apps do, actually. Censors things. So, for example, you'll see sex workers who are in the adult film industry. They will not write, hey, I was a porn actress or I was a porn actor. They will write, I was a, and then it'll be the corn emoji and then actors, right? And so it's people trying to get around the algorithms. Now, the computers aren't stupid. They know. It's very easy. I mean, it's so easy to push an update and say, oh, whenever somebody writes unalived in a caption, they're talking about violence. So people are trying to beat the algorithm. People are trying to influence the algorithm and almost they're trying to reprogram the computers. But I think what's happening is if the computers are causing you to speak differently, the computers are programming you. So it's this extremely interesting dance, and I think it's getting faster and faster and faster, and just spinning around more and more. But that's one thing that I've really noticed. Again, this is aside from policy, but it is something that has actually 100% affected culture in general, I think. And it's not just a youth thing. I think it's everybody.
So I know Coda says last question, but I'm going to take prerogative and just ask you one quick one
Do
and then
it.
we'll jump in. Because I think you said in your interview with that TikTok has irreversibly bent our culture's trajectory.
Yes.
So I'd love to know what that means. And then as a follow-up, because I can't not do a two-part question. I mean,
True
what
academic.
I have seen in politics, right, is that the candidates and the politicians who can get ahead of technology, use it to their advantage, actually often prevail. And so I'm interested in whether you think that despite this fight to ban, like that, if we assume it won't happen for lots of legal and political reasons, do you think that TikTok could also really bend what we think of as how politicians communicate and how policy gets made? So those are two actually huge questions. So you could just pick one if you want. And then
Sure.
we'll engage.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I can jump into that. I mean, how has it changed? I mean, it's changed in the way that I was just mentioning, right? Is I think it's certainly fair to say that attention spans have gotten shorter. Attention spans have absolutely gotten shorter. I've noticed this. I've been at Vice. I was in the video game for not video games, but in the business of video, for 7.5 years. And I noticed that it was getting harder to get people to watch longer pieces, and that people were sort of surprised that something couldn't be conveyed in 90 seconds, or annoyed that something could not be conveyed in 90 seconds. Now, I think things are actually shifting over a bit. So, I think we can look at, for example, like a Mr. Beast. Like look at Mr. Beast's videos. It treats you like you have below room temperature IQ. It's phenomenally like you have like your brain is so fried. I shouldn't even say it like that, but your brain is so fried that you're incapable of paying attention. And so it's throwing edits at you as quickly as possible. There are some people who are getting really burned out on that. There's some people who just prefer to, this is why Twitch works, right? People like to sit around and just hear somebody talk for hours, right? But again, I think that's one way. Oh my gosh, and then I've lost the second one. Oh, in terms of the ways that, politicians using social media. I mean, look, in the 2008 campaign, Obama made it very clear that he was going to win the youth vote, not necessarily because of policy alone, but because he just spoke the language. He truly just spoke the language. He was on MySpace. His opponent didn't really get MySpace. As a matter of fact, he was so on MySpace that there was a dude who had a fan page on MySpace that the campaign, depending on who you talk to, kind of stole it from the fan, strong-armed this dude out of his account, took the MySpace account, and then ran that. Now, by the 2012 re-election campaign, he wasn't really touching MySpace. He was on Reddit, he was on Twitter. And so the politicians who are able to be nimble and use these tools because they are tools, this is part of my answer is the politicians who are able to use these tools. I do not think there's an excuse for any politician to not understand this technology. You don't have to be a TikTok power user, but you should not be not even understanding how this stuff works before you walk into that hearing. That is irresponsible. Get somebody to explain it to you, sit down for an hour, you know, go in a bunker somewhere and flip through the phone for a while, figure out how this thing works, and then make policy. I'm cool with that. That being said, we should also not fool ourselves into thinking that the technology culturally does not shape us. Because yes, our attention span has gotten shorter. Yes, we have started to expect certain things. Yes, we speak differently. We even start to make the structure of, and why speak, I mean accent. I mean tone of our voice, the way we inflect our voices, right? But also the way that we structure things. You probably know this in TikTok. If you don't have somebody's attention in 2 seconds, you swipe by. And so people will, when they're trying to tell a story, instead of telling a story that develops and kind of has rising and falling action like normal people speak in a sentence, they'll start off with the most egregious, wild thing. Like, I got robbed in the parking lot today. You didn't actually get robbed. Somebody didn't like your car and you felt like your car wasn't cool enough. And so, I don't know, you didn't get a boyfriend. I don't know, man. But you see what I'm saying? We're getting used to saying the most egregious and most wild and most just inflammatory things. It's not only TikTok, Twitter this to us as well. But let's not pretend like the technology doesn't also affect us, and that includes politicians. Last thing I'll say is one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of Trump is that he's addicted to Twitter. I think that explains a lot of things. He's very, very good at Twitter, was very good at Twitter. But he's a top 0.1% Twitter users, as in really, really, really good at provoking reactions, which it turns out that's what Twitter rewards now. It used to reward other things, now it rewards reactions. Really good at it. If that milieu, if that platform didn't exist, he wouldn't be getting the sorts of rewards for communicating that way. So again, let's not pretend that the technology doesn't also shape us.
That's fascinating. Thank you. So we would love to turn it over to you all of questions. We have a microphone and we'd love for you to come to that, because then Dexter can actually see you. So for those of you who don't like a microphone in the middle room, forgive us. And those who love to come up and talk to a microphone, but who wants to jump in? Who wants to be first? Thank you. It should be on. It's a little low for you, clearly. You're gonna, hold on, Ian's gonna help you out. There we go, awesome.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I can. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just interested about your interview with the TikTok CEO, and I was just
Sure.
wondering what, you talked with him and some of the questions you had and the answers you got. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah. Well, before I have you, no worries if you haven't. Did you read it?
What? No, I haven't.
You haven't. Okay, no worries, no worries. So for anybody who read it, give it a look, or if you haven't, give it a look. But mostly we talked about culture, honestly, because the cultural impact. And one of the big things we talk about actually is music. And so this is where I found, maybe I'll just stick on the music part. A lot of musicians and a lot of fans. So a lot of fans have said, and musicians have said, that TikTok, they feel like TikTok is kind of ruining music. And at the very best, it's something of a double-edged sword, right? Because it's possible for you to, any one of you in this room, I'm sure that you're a lot of really talented, interesting people. There's a very low chance that any of you are going to get a Grammy. At least in the old, in the old structure, right? If one of you all wanted to get a Grammy, if one of you all wanted to get a platinum selling record, you're in the wrong state, you're in the wrong city. You need to move to Los Angeles and you need to move to New York. And if you're not in one of those cities, you're kind of screwed. You're not making a platinum record, right? You also need to get signed. You also need to get hooked in with some good producers. You need to make music videos, all these things, right? If we're talking even just 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? TikTok has changed that, where any of you, if you have even a modicum of talent, you could do something interesting in your dorm room, in your bedroom, outside on campus, and you might have a hit on your hands if it goes viral. And who knows why it goes viral, right? That's great. This is TikTok's, or this is, excuse me, this is the CEO's argument. The counter argument is that what that is rewarding is not necessarily musical talent or even musical passion, but it's rewarding people who are good at being interesting on TikTok on a screen. So I don't know what kind of music you all listen to, but some of y'all might listen to some people who are kind of weird and kind of bad at interviews. I've interviewed a lot of musicians. A lot of musicians who are really, really good at music are terrible at talking to people because their primary mode of expression is music. That's why it's so good, because they spend all time, they spend all their day locked up in a room because they're bad at talking to people, but they're really, really, really great at talking to the guitar. They're really, really, really great at talking with their computer, right? Which is beautiful. I think that's great. I think the issue is on TikTok is that there's an expectation. Viewers, we really want to see behind the scenes. We want authenticity. What the heck is even authenticity? When we see authenticity, what we don't mean authenticity. We mean we want invasive looking into that person's life. We want to see what they eat. We want to see a very pretty version of what they eat. We want to see their work, get ready with me. I don't want to get ready with you. Send me your music. You know what I mean? And so this is kind of where I think, I don't know what necessarily say that I was butting heads with them, but one of the big things that I think TikTok is, I don't know that they fully appreciate as a company, that there are musicians who on one hand feel like they're being, there's a handful, certainly, and more than a handful, who have blown up out of nowhere. It's great for them. But there are also a lot of people who will tell you and have told me, musicians, I want to make music and my label is forcing me to make TikToks. And I hate this because I feel like I can't just be a musician. I have to be an ad manager. Like, I don't want to go to business school. I just want to make music. And now that's not enough. So that was, I think, one of the big disconnects, because the thing is, TikTok doesn't care if your video is artistic or not. It cares how long you watched it. It's content. It's all content. So that was one of the big points I found interesting in there. But I'd love to, if you get a chance to read it, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Yeah, thank you. Great question.
I'd love to ask a follow-up. And
Yeah.
thinking about the impact of TikTok on music, earlier this year, Universal Music Group had an announcement that they'll stop licensing its content to TikTok as well as TikTok Music Services. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this debate.
I've been having some conversations with some musicians who are actually affected by that. They're pretty upset. This at the end of the day, this is two businesses fighting with each other. Like, let's not forget that. Mostly, right? This is a large corporation fighting with another large corporation, and things broke down so badly that one of them said, "Okay, I'm taking my toys and going home." These things happen, right? What that has meant, though, is that there were, people who were using those sounds to say some pretty important stuff about their own lives, about things that didn't need to be paid attention to. So imagine if you used, I don't know, some Beyonce song or something like that in the background of you talking about some really, truly important thing that happened in your life, and a whole bunch of people were really inspired by it, or they didn't know that was a thing that happens, right? You're talking about abuse, or you're talking about something inspiring or whatever. And then all of a sudden that song gets axed and your whole TikTok is muted. And now that thing that you made is gone. So I think that's been some of the collateral damage. Of course, artists, right? Of course, artists, but also just people have also been affected by it. So, I think we're going to continue to see stuff like this. I mean, look at Apple and, the Epic Game Store. This stuff is going to keep happening, and it's not shocking. But yeah, again, it's another reason why we should be taking TikTok seriously, because, here's a company that most people, it didn't really exist a few years ago. And now one of the largest sources of audio is fighting with them. Huge company. So yeah, it's important.
What else is on your mind? Can you come over to the microphone, please?
Hi. Based off what you said about Obama's '08 campaign, I'm curious about your thoughts on why Biden would come out against TikTok in the legislation on the ban. I was a bit surprised about that.
Yeah, so he's not coming out against it. He's just saying if the thing hits his desk, he'll sign it. Um, and this is the thing. I think so. Okay, maybe this is a good time to talk about xenophobia. So we are in an environment where anything Chinese is bad, or it's very easy to paint it as bad. Some of it may be truly bad. But there's no, okay. So as I was talking about the, the other apps, right? The consideration of security on other apps, Facebook, other things like that. So I pulled up something a second ago. So there's a really great article written by a former colleague of mine on 404 Media. Great site. If you're interested in tech reporting, great site. I'm just going to quote a little bit of this to you. So, and I'm just paraphrasing here. Okay. Instagram's effects on teens have been widely documented by Meta's own employees. Some of my colleagues have been able to document the sale of drugs, guns, hacking services, counterfeit ads on Instagram. Discord is full of communities used for organizing by neo-Nazis and paramilitaries, criminal hackers, crypto scammers, deepfake peddlers, teens who kidnap each other. Facebook is full of AI-generated garbage. It's been credibly accused of being abused to facilitate an entire genocide of Myanmar. Twitter is full of malware. YouTube has been used by ISIS terrorists, white supremacists, mass shooters, and child brainwashers. Telegram is, look, we could go on. Here's the point. I think what's actually happening here is that we know, all of us know. Look, I mean, raise your hands. Who thinks there's something a little bit off about social media in general? Just raise your hands. Like, who thinks, yeah. Raise your hands if you think social media is perfect and nothing should be changed. Didn't think so. We all know that something is wrong, something should be done, but we're so addicted to it. And I don't mean kids. I frankly mean boomers. Because we could talk about this some other time, but like the people who are truly locked into this stuff, try to get your parents off of Facebook. Seriously, it's not possible. They're so locked in. They really be on Facebook. Like I've never seen anybody be on anything. It's not Gen Z. It's kind of not even millennials. It's really people who are older than this. So we're so addicted to these platforms that there is no political will to change anything, truly. But we know something must be done. And so when there is an app that is created by a foreign adversary, and that's not my words. There's actually a list. Some of y'all know this who are in policy. There's a list of countries that are listed as foreign adversaries. Russia's another one. China is one. North Korea is another one, right? There's lists. When there's an app that is created by a foreign adversary, suddenly we find the political will to do something. TikTok is a scapegoat. TikTok may be worse than some of these other apps. It may not be. We don't totally have the evidence either way. Security researchers, the people who are experts, their knowledge is above me. They agree that we should be cautious about TikTok, but they also agree we should be cautious about all these other things. We haven't moved on any of these other things, not really. There's been no meaningful reform, no meaningful legislation to rein these things in with regards to policy. So to answer your question, why is Biden he's not necessarily turning on TikTok, but why would he be willing to sign something like that? I think because just societally, that's where we are. And that's going to be the will of the government that's behind him. So yeah, I'm not shocked that he's saying, yeah, if you can get it to my desk, I'll sign it. And we should be prepared for that. There is a real chance that this happens. TikTok could go away. It's absolutely possible. It happened in India. India banned TikTok in 2020. It could happen.
Come on down.
Bring them on. Bring them on.
They're getting going, Dexter. They're ready. Yeah, they're coming.
I just realized that I actually read your interview with the TikTok CEO in Wired, but I didn't realize that you were the one who wrote that until now.
Yes. Hi.
But my question is, what do you think are will be the repercussions of the US banning TikTok, like as broadly as possible,
As broadly as possible.
on culture, like you were mentioning?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in terms of in the short term, life will move on. Like I said, India banned it. And if you were for the people who were using TikTok in the early days, like 2018, 2019, was anybody using TikTok back then? Okay. Then you remember that India was carrying that app. Like you probably did anybody see stuff from out of India back then? Do you remember that? Some of y'all, yeah, like you would see so much stuff out of India, even if you had no connection to anybody in the subcontinent. You would see so much stuff out of India because they were just power users over there. Oh, this is like 1 billion people, so I guess it makes sense. But they were really using it a lot. Now, when it got banned, did they just stop making videos? No, they just went to other platforms. So in the short term, here's what would happen. Obviously, you're not going to get in trouble for having TikTok on your phone. What'll happen is basically the people who get punished for having the apps are anybody who provides the app. So that means the Apple Store or Google Play Store, right? And so what'll happen is you will no longer get updates to your app. And so your app will just slowly go out of date. You won't be able to update it, and then it'll just become incompatible and you won't be able to access it. So if TikTok was to be banned today and TikTok, you couldn't download it anymore, you could still use it and you could still access stuff. More than likely, that's probably what would happen. This is my guess. But after a while, you would just not be able to connect to the servers and you wouldn't see anything. That's a short term. What would happen? People would just move over to Instagram Reels, more than likely, YouTube Shorts. Maybe some other company comes up, maybe not. This is why I said Trump saying that, listen, Trump is correct here, I think, actually, that this would play right into Zuckerberg's hands. Trump would love to eat TikTok's lunch. Love to, of course. There's a bit of a doom scenario, which I don't want to get too far into, but I don't really think anything that separates, I think, how to put this? I think if things get really bad in the future between the United States and China, really bad, I'll let you fill in the blank there. I think if things get really, and this is my thing as a cultural observer, right? I think if things get really bad in the future between the United States and China, let's say in 5 years, I think people will look back and they'll say, you know what? That TikTok thing was a little bit more significant than we thought. And not everything that has to do with conflicts between countries has to do with what politicians are doing. Sometimes it's on a cultural level. And this is very much one of those things. It's both. So the repercussions could be pretty significant, I think, actually. Because China, societally, China is not going to like this. There's no way.
I'm just going to take this in my hand because I'm too short.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Anavi, and
What's going on?
just like a side note, I'm Indian, and the reason I never used TikTok was because it was banned for my parents that we use social media. And you said that the banning of TikTok in the US is a very real possibility because it happened in India, but also there are these subtle differences in how the legislature of India works in comparison to how US legislature works,
Right.
which essentially facilitated the ban of TikTok in India. So coming back to the US Congress, what do you think is going to happen in the Senate? You know, would Chuck Schumer even bring it up? And you know, even if he does, then let's say the president signs it, after it passes the Senate, what do you think is going to happen with other social media companies? Because Facebook has, you know, been in front of Congress, Meta has been in front of Congress before, TikTok has been in front of Congress before. So
Yeah.
what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. So here's what we're getting into the prediction stage. It's a little bit dicier, but happy to try. So yeah, you're totally right. And I mean also the conditions, why did India ban TikTok? Reasons are very different from why that happened in the United States, which we don't have to get into. Sounds like you're aware of this. So yeah, very, very different. For all of the similarities that the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy have, we also have some differences. So that being said, what happens next? I think it is possible that they keep pushing it. I think also, however, here's what's going to happen is they're going to have a really big issue with the First Amendment. And TikTok, so this is what I feel very comfortable predicting. TikTok is going to throw absolutely everything they can at a First Amendment argument here, which is what happened with the first time. It was easily shot down in court. And so to answer your other question really briefly, do I think they're going to go after Meta as hard? No, I don't think so. For the reasons that I just stated, right? I think this is specifically because it is a Chinese app. Okay, if they were specifically only talking about security, I would think maybe there's a chance that they're going to go as hard on the other apps as possible. But when you have a commissioner of the FCC tweeting that, quote tweeting a 60 Minutes clip and tweeting out on its Twitter account, on the official Twitter account, saying that in China, the Chinese version of the app shows kids educational and STEM content, and here they show us self-harm. Bro, if you think that China is full of only STEM and educational content, I have a wall to sell you, because the amount of misinformation that's on the Chinese version of TikTok, Douyin, that's on Douyin, it's incredible. Just the other day, I was reading about some people who are getting in some serious trouble for actual fraud on their TikTok. There's all sorts of bad stuff happening on their social media. There's a perception that TikTok is being used to infiltrate the United States with communist propaganda. There's no evidence of this. And also, propaganda is not illegal. But one thing that is illegal is certain things that violate the First Amendment. And so I think that is going to be, and here's what I mean. First Amendment, and this is misused a lot, and I'm going to abuse this a little bit too. One of the things about First Amendment is you cannot take away somebody's ability to express themselves. And in 2024, a really important part of one's ability to express themselves is an app like TikTok. The courts take this stuff really, really seriously, to the point where there was a guy who was convicted of crimes against a minor. I'll let you fill in the details. And they said, hey, you're not allowed to be on Facebook anymore. You can't read or post on Facebook. The guy posted on Facebook, they arrested him. And then the US Supreme Court said, you can't stop this guy from using Facebook because that's a violation of his First Amendment. And so if we're willing, as the United States, we're willing to go to bat for that, imagine what a well-funded company is going to do when they get up to the plate and they say, you are taking away the right of 150 million Americans to express themselves. I think this is going to be it's going to be an interesting fight. That's my prediction, if it gets that far.
Got it. Thank you so much.
No doubt. Thank you.
We have time for a couple more. Wanna go? Yep.
Sorry, this is gonna be like a wandering train of thought.
Do it.
I was wondering, like, how is the perception and reaction to TikTok in other countries? I know this is really broad, so I'm gonna like try to give like kind of like a case study. I understand from your background, you're probably like more familiar with a country like Japan. So I was thinking, well, Japan has a lot of similarities to the United States, and that there could be like a pertinent security interest or at least justification in restricting TikTok. They have like a above baseline level of negative sentiment toward China. So, is there
Putting it lightly, yes.
there like a like observable similarities in how like a country like Japan, for example, reacts to TikTok? Is it even as big of a platform over there that there would be such a reaction? You know, how's that sort of thing playing out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think maybe the easiest thing to say is that there are a lot of countries that are kind of waiting to see what the US does. So I think when the US does something, generally Australia starts to follow well, in a lot of senses, but in this sense particularly. You know, countries in Europe, you know, the UK. And so I think there's a possibility, and TikTok knows this, that there will be a bit of a domino effect. That if the US bans it, a lot of other countries are going to start taking it really seriously, because that's already happening now. You're already seeing that a bit. There's already a number of countries that have done similar to the United States, ban government employees from having the app on their phones. And so, you know, Japan, for various reasons, also does tend to follow what the US does in some regards. I would say actually, you know, in some ways they're a little bit more conservative on a lot of social issues than US is, with respect to laws. And so you know, I think that's also a possibility. Yeah. And then of course combine that with, as you said, above the average, you know, a couple standard deviations above the mean, dislike of China. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So it's a possibility.
Thank you.
So
No
I think
doubt.
we'll take one last question, and I know people are gonna have to sneak out, so we're gonna keep it tight, and then, and we'll say our goodbyes. But hopefully you can stick around for just one more minute.
Hello, I was wondering your thoughts on Representative Jeff Jackson's decision to vote for the ban on TikTok, considering he's like the most followed congressman on TikTok, and what this means for politicians in the future who want to reach the younger audience on social media, given like the repercussions he's got from Gen Z in particular, finding out that he voted to ban TikTok.
Say a little bit more. What do you think?
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
You said the repercussions. What do you mean? Tell me more.
Well, I just think that, that since people are becoming more informed,
Mm-hmm.
that like they were, I don't know how to formulate this, but they looked into the situation themselves and found that he voted to ban TikTok.
Right.
Since people have information at their fingertips, I think
Mhm.
politicians would have to be more careful, and that would potentially influence their voting on stuff like that. But that's why.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I mean, I think there's a couple. So I'm not as familiar with this particular person, but what I can say is I have a couple of unfortunately cynical things to say. Great question, by the way. But what I would say would be, first off, most of the people that a politician is going to care about are the people that's in their particular district, right? You can say whatever kind of stuff you want to say, but if I'm over here in LA and you're running in Texas, my words don't mean that much. Also, hate to break it to you, young people don't vote. Young people make a lot of noise on the internet. Young people don't vote. And a lot of politicians are banking on that. And so the challenge is going to be, are people going to turn those words into action? And that's up to those young people, I suppose.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We're right at 7. I want to, let's Dexter close on the fact that, like, let's make sure this group of folks does vote. And I want to make sure you're all voting, because that's incredibly important. Dexter, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I meant it when I said it at the beginning of the hour, and I mean it even more now. We got to get you to Waterville and spend some time with us. This has been an
I'd
incredible.
love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to bring some, bring some colleagues, bring some friends.
Yeah.
But yo, I will say this too. I know sometimes it's hard to get in questions, or you don't feel comfortable saying it on a microphone. I am very easy to find. Feel free for y'all. Like, I'm not going to say my email address because I know you're recording this and put it out there. But if you want to pass the email to people, feel free. My social media, anything is DexDigi, DEXDIGI. I'm very easy to find. You can message me on just about anything but Twitter, because I don't use Twitter, and I'll respond. But yeah, if you have any questions, anything I can help with, or if you just want me to point you to some of the articles that I was talking about, if you want those links, like the one on 404 Media, happy to send that to you. But I'm really happy that, y'all are interested and engaged and care about this stuff because I think it's really important.
Well, thank you, Dexter Thomas. We're so grateful. And thank you, Coda, for joining me, and a big round to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dexter. And good night to you all. Bye, Dexter.